making sure we get the points across and meet you where you're at. What are those two objectives? Well, the first objective is we want to share insights into the ecosystem of financing instruments and impact investments while developing health tech, medtech, and biotech products, especially geared towards benefiting populations in low and middle income countries. So the first objective is really just to give you a glimpse of what is out there. The second objective of this session is to then discuss what are the challenges and the opportunities in that system while going forward. So we have a lot on our plate for 1.5 hours, as you see. What have we designed for you to meet those objectives? There will be several elements in this session. We've already started with the first element, which is a brief introduction from my side. This will be followed by a speech by State Secretary Mr. Flassbart on the perspective of Germany in the bilateral sense. This will be followed by a panel presentation of 5 experts and a panel discussion, which will then again give room for you in an open question and answer session to address questions to the panelists. The session will close at 12:30, followed by lunch. So we all have in mind what we are going to do in 1.5 hours. Let's start talking about the topic at hand. You might all be familiar with the following figures. At the turn of the century, low and middle income countries' populations accounted for 85% of the global population, while shouldering 92% of, and I'm lost the mic. There it is again. Perfect. So 85% of the global population shouldering 92% of the global disease burden, while only 10% of global funding for health research accounted towards actually meeting those challenges. Well, that was the millennium. Why talk about it today? Today we live in a world of multiple crises and pandemic, as well as climate change. So while the diagnostic was true at the turn of the millennium, it might be even more true today, and we still face challenges that need to be addressed to move forward towards global health security. While we can all agree, I think, that there is a need for medical innovation to address those challenges, research and development oftentimes focuses on markets that promise to render a profit and/or markets that promise to have an easier access for the products that have been developed and the money that went into the research and development to make those products happen. So there is a gap, or several gaps actually, that need to be addressed by existing funding mechanisms and financing instruments. We need to broaden these mechanisms, we need to deepen them, but we also need to fill the gaps by inventing new mechanisms to fill those gaps in financing research development and in financing access to those markets, so everyone worldwide can have affordable and at time healthcare. To offer you a bit of orientation of what we are going to do today, we have brought along the graphic that you see pulled up on the screen for you. We will examine this value chain from molecules to markets with you today to give you an insight into, what's out there, who works along this value chain, and with what instruments, what do they do, how do they do it, where are the impacts, what are the impacts, where are the challenges that need to be addressed along this value chain. But while this graph might be pretty easily grasped, there is an entire ecosystem of stakeholders and financing instruments lying behind that simple graph that we want to present to you today. Those variety of stakeholders and mechanisms not only comes in at every step of the value chain that you see on the screen, they also come in, now I lost my point. What did I say first? Did I say financing first, or did I say what they do first? All right, so let's start again with that. What I want to say is, along this value chain, you have a variety of stakeholders, not only in getting every step of the value chain done, but also in financing them. And if you think at it that way, it becomes clear pretty quickly that what looks like a simple graph is actually an entire world of its own. For the first 3 steps in this value chain, we might see an integrated approach for products that are designed for larger markets or markets that are more easily accessible for products. However, if you look at smaller markets or markets with a lower purchasing power, those steps might become fragmented. We might see a combination of actors and stakeholders to achieve each step of the value chain, and that's important, but it also makes the system quite complex. So we wanted to guide you a bit with a graph that is simple enough to grasp, while also saying we've a whole world to explore in this session. We will start this exploration with the German bilateral perspective. Now, nations around the globe have acknowledged their responsibility to work towards health security worldwide. And their landmark commitment is certainly the SDGs, notably SDG 3 on health and well-being. Germany has welcomed this responsibility. But in times of crisis, against the backdrop of the pandemic, multiple crises, and climate change, in the German perspective, it is important to work towards solutions in a networked, coordinated, and joint manner. That is, for Germany, partnerships are crucially important to achieving results. For example, the German government, via the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the Federal Ministry for Education and Research, supports product development partnerships and impact investment funds. Now let's hear more about the German bilateral perspectives. Please welcome with me to the lectern from the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, State Secretary, Mr. Jochen Flassbart.
Thank you, Anja Hanisch. A warm welcome to everybody. Good morning. I'm happy to be this year again at the World Health Summit. I'm just coming from the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, the first edition, whereas the WHS has already a lot of experience, a huge history. And so in a way, I'm in a flow, if you like, to discuss with those who are wanting to collaborate with others in the world, finding better and faster tracks to reach our SDGs, the 2030 agenda. And of course, whereas the HSC has a broad spectrum of SDGs, here at the WHS, as has been said by Anja Hanisch, we have a focus on SDG 3. Thanks for inviting me to this workshop right at the beginning of the summit, and dealing with, as we already heard from through the introduction, with one of the most pressing issues in the health sector, and that is how to provide the right health services to the poorest and to the most vulnerable in the world. Just some figures. I was allowed to raise my hand a bit when you asked the question because I got a perfect briefing from my team. And I found some very frightening figures. 1 billion people in the world are suffering from neglected tropical diseases. 1.7 billion are exposed to them. In 2019, obviously the last year, assessment year, 1.3 million people died from antibiotic resistant bacterial infections. And I saw in a WHO paper that this number is estimated to climb up to, in a total, to 40 million by 2050. And most of the victims of those diseases are coming from middle-income countries, But this is not drawing the right picture because in many of the middle-income countries we have a huge Gini index. So these people are coming from among the poorest of the poorest and the most vulnerable, including women and children. So now we here have a triple challenge. The other picture had 6 items, but I'm focusing on a triple challenge, and I want to describe it with number 1, how to develop pharmaceuticals or health products that do not meet market interests, and because they have high R&D costs at the one time and low return of investment expectations. So I'm speaking of the group of countries I just mentioned and you mentioned, and herein the part of populations that usually is not able to finance the return of investment on those products. Secondly, how to get the innovations into the market once the products are developed. And third, how to make them available for the affected groups. To turn to the first, Germany is a major supporter of, Anja Hanisch mentioned already, as a product development partnerships, a very innovative approach to pool public, private and philanthropic investments to develop treatments for diseases in commercially non-attractive markets. We are collaborating here with our colleagues from the Ministry for Research, BMBF. We provided together up to now 315 million euros grant money for the BDPs, and this brought up extremely good results. First, for example, the first WHO-approved malaria vaccine, which reached 1.7 million children in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi, and a new tuberculosis treatment that reduces the treatment time from 18 months to 6 months. Regarding the second challenge, how to bring the innovations into the market, the impact investment funds that are in the focus of this session come into play. The German government has put a lot of efforts through KfW into these impact investment funds. Most prominent the Global Health Investment Fund, through which we also support other funds, for example, the Women's and Children Health Technology Funds. All these funds have in common 6 as a total we are investing in, have in common to de-risk investments in markets where otherwise those investments would not show up, or where those markets would not be developed. So it's sometimes the first losses or whatever way to de-risk investments you want to take. This approach again has proven to be very successful. The German, if you like to say so, the German dollars or euros triggered 3 other dollars from other public sources. And what is very interesting for me, the leverage factor to leverage private investments is even higher. Along with the Global Health Investment Fund, it was 1 to 4. Extremely good, I would say. We have other areas where you by far don't reach this high numbers of leveraging. And again, we have some very good examples with the investment impact funds. We were able, for example, to scale up cholera vaccines of EU biologics, diagnostic tests for malaria of Access Bio, or mRNA productive containers of universals. Finally, the products, that's the third challenge, need to find a way to the affected vulnerable people. And here we luckily do not have to reinvent the wheel. We have our big partners, Gavi and the Global Fund, very experienced, very successful champions in this area. For example, the cholera vaccine out of the funds I just mentioned is now part of Gavi's stockpile, and locally manufactured malaria diagnostics are rolled out through Ethiopia. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, what we are talking here about, and that makes it so important, is nothing abstract. It's about the real concrete life of millions and billions of people. I think smart, innovative solutions like the impact investment funds are an appropriate answer. And let me add, because it's our day-by-day business at the moment, especially in times when public budgets are under threat. It's not something exclusively for Germany, but also here, and therefore we need to find ways to get more out of the public money we are having. I think with the BTPs, with the impact investment funds, and with our global partners, we are having a triple answer to the triple challenge. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Flassbart, for this triple answer to a triple challenge. I think we've learned a lot already about impact investment funds and product development partnerships, for example, to give 2 examples of the triple response to the triple challenge. Now let's welcome our panelists to the panel, and I know your fingers and hands are probably itching to applaud each and every one of them. Let's wrap that up and keep the applause for when everybody is on the stage. Thank you so much. We have with us today Labib Aboud, who is CEO and chairman for the Global Health Investment Corporation. Welcome, Labib. We have Dr. Monique Wasuna from DNDi, the Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative, a nonprofit research organization. I forgot to mention for Labib that he is not only with GHIC today, of course, but he has spent also 70 years in senior leadership roles with the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, IAVI. For Monique, I'd also like to mention that she has received the Distinguished Neglected Tropical Diseases Researcher Award from the Ministry of Health in Kenya. We have with us today Dr. Carlos Castillejos, who is Global Head of Medical and Scientific Affairs at Johnson & Johnson. Carlos spent several years also with Janssen in roles of increasing seniority in R&D functions. We have with us today also Hala Audi, who is Chief Alliance Officer at Univercells and CEO at Unisima. Unisima is a company of Univercells dedicated to building biopharma infrastructure in emerging markets. Hala came to Univercells with over 20 years of experience in international project management, law, and governmental work. And last but not least, we have with us Michael Anderson, the CEO of MedAccess, a nonprofit social enterprise focusing on achieving access for health products. Michael, inter alia, and I'm shortening everybody's vitae here because otherwise we wouldn't have any time left, also served as the UK Prime Ministers for the Global Development Goals. Thank you very much. Oh, well, from here I can't see everybody of you, but that doesn't matter. Let's get started. Labib, with GHCI being a nonprofit organization with over 10 years of experience in investing in global health innovation and the corresponding fund, GHIF, being around since 2012, could you take us back to the time when this fund was created so we understand where the impulse came from? What was the landscape looking like when you decided to launch the GHIF to make access possible?
Thank you. And it's wonderful to reflect back to that time, 2011, 12. At the time, this organization, Global Health Investment Corporation, really was born from the vision of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the time, who was funding into global health product development a portfolio of drugs, vaccines, diagnostics devices, and recognized that additional capital would be needed to continue to fund all the products that were needed to try to address the disease burden disproportionately hurting and affecting lower middle income country populations. And many of the programs at the time, they believed, needed to be grant funded and should be grant funded, but they believed that some subset of the portfolio of products and technologies underway at the time could benefit from and bear return-seeking capital. And so the idea was to try to create an independent organization in the form of a nonprofit corporation that would try to mobilize capital, investment capital from the private sector, as well as blend with public and philanthropic capital, to deploy that capital in investments to support the development and commercialization of drugs, vaccines, diagnostics devices, maternal child health interventions that could benefit people in need, with a particular focus on lower middle income country, but not exclusively, because many of these products, of course, could have application globally. So GHIC was created, and its first mission, its first task, was to create what was effectively a pilot investment fund, the Global Health Investment Fund. And at the time, I was privileged to be invited to join this effort to create the organization, to create and launch the first fund, which was the Global Health Investment Fund, which raised $108 million from public, private, and philanthropic sector, pharma companies, multilateral organizations, impact investors, governments, and begin that journey of investing, identifying promising technologies, not only with companies, but also with nonprofit organizations that were developing products, and try to support their development and ensure, in each case, that there were commitments made to deliver the products, if successfully registered, in a way that would be affordable and accessible in lower middle income countries. So it was really a novel pilot at the time to see if this could work. Could we bring capital? Could we identify promising projects? Could we help those portfolio companies and organizations advance those technologies and ensure access? And as was mentioned, the pilot was viewed as quite a successful pilot, both from the double bottom line goals at the time, which were mission first, try to drive health impact, positive health impact, and second, to achieve a financial return that was commensurate and appropriate for the types of risks we were taking and the types of markets that we were targeting. I would say, in retrospect, there was a third, a triple bottom line that we hadn't recognized fully the third dimension of this, to come back to the triple dimensions that we're talking about today, and that is not just to achieve mission impact with the investment, not just to achieve a reasonable and appropriate return, but to catalyze through that example, through that model, to catalyze additional capital that would come from others to do more. And I think that's a theme that we may want to come back to in terms of how can actors in this field, governments, other investors, et cetera, use their balance sheets and their investment capital and their catalytic capital to catalyze and crowd in additional capital.
Labib, thank you for those interesting points. You've mentioned a couple of times the impact that you achieved with GHIF being a pilot fund. Ever since, what kind of impact are you personally most proud of having achieved with GHIF?
Well, first I would say that everything that we've done since the beginning was done in partnership with many other core partners and other companies and portfolio companies and many others on the ground trying to help advance the shared mission. And And I'd like to highlight the fact that not only was the first key core partnership for the organization, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but at the same time, the second that was established was with the government of Germany through BMZ and KfW, because that the relationship that began with a BMZ KfW grant to GHIC to support the investment, an investment in the fund, was able to be recycled to make additional investment in global health. And that relationship has expanded over time, where we've been really privileged to work with our BMZ and KfW partners to do more in the field of impact investing in global health. And most recently, we had the opportunity together to launch a catalytic health investment platform, which is really designed to support and try to help accelerate additional progress in product development focused on low and middle income country populations, with investment funds and direct investments in companies and grants, all within scope of a 20-year partnership that has expanded. So that has been a fantastic opportunity to do more, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of with our colleagues here to have participated in. And I think following that, just the seeing in the market and around the additional interest to invest in global health product development more broadly. There has been well more than 10 times the amount that we invested in global health investment fund invested by others in the years since across technologies and products focusing on lower middle income countries. So that multiplier effect, I think, is hugely important, and being able to have shared an example of one type of model that appeared to be effective to draw others into the field.
Labib, so effectively the 3-to-1 ratio mentioned by State Secretary Mr. Flassbeit is even topped. Now we're at 10-to-1, if I understand you correctly. Monique, let's hear about DNDi. For those of us in the room who are not especially familiar with the work that DNDi does, could you give us a brief overview over the organization's initiatives, please? And I'll pull up the value chain again for you, but don't mind me.
The button here. How do you put it? It's on already. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Glad you have come. The room is full. So I want to break protocol here, Anya, and start by thanking the State Secretary for Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. Yeah. Thank you, because through you, I want to thank the German government for what you are doing. At least you've been funding DNDi, and I wanted to add to your example of malaria, I wanted to add sleeping sickness. The government of Germany has supported sleeping sickness, literally from the bench to the bedside, from the molecule to patient. Yeah. So the R&D, for example, the research and development was supported by BMBF, and access was supported by BMZ for leishmaniasis and also for sleeping sickness. So we want to say thank you, and there are many governments here. Please, let's follow Germany and keep. Yeah. So, okay, you asked me how DNDi works. DNDi was created almost about 21 years now, old. And DNDi was created because there was a breakdown in the system of research and development. There were so many patients who are dying because there were lack of treatments. As the State Secretary has said, 1.7 billion people are affected, are impacted by this disease, and over 1 billion actually have the disease. So the system was broken. Nobody was doing research and development because there was no incentive, and these people were very poor, and they couldn't afford to buy the medicines. So then a new system had to be created where these voices could also be heard. And I was a young doctor then working in the field, and patients were dying, literally even from my own country and from other African countries, because they're competing priorities. And so DNDI was created, and then DNDI had to change the R&D system. We are actually like a mini farmer ourselves, yeah? But we don't say that loudly, but we are. We are mini farmer. We do everything the way the farmer is doing, and actually it costs a little or much more less money, about 180 million to 200 million to deliver a product. So why is that? Because of the partnerships. The way we work through partnerships. We don't do anything by ourselves, and that's our model. We work with everyone. We work with scientists, with academia, with communities, with experts in the diseases themselves. So we involve everybody, a partnership model. We have over 225 partners spread all over the world in about 47 countries, and we're active in about 8 diseases. So ours is to develop, discover, and deliver treatments for neglected patients. And the neglected diseases, there are many of them. There are like 20 of them, but we just chosen a few that are very, very neglected. And also areas where people are neglected. Not the disease, but also the people are neglected. So, and also we work through partnership, and then we work through platforms, specific platforms as well. We developed like five platforms for leishmaniasis, for sleeping sickness, Chagas, dengue, and red leash. And so this is also working with a community, working together. And if you live with nothing else, is that with DNDI, partners drive our innovation, and partners are key. We are nothing without our partners.
Monique, may I come in at this point, because we will be looking at the entire ecosystem of what is out there to address the challenges in global health by making sure that we can benefit, especially persons living in low and middle income countries. Where would you say is DNDI's specific value added to this ecosystem? What makes DNDI different? What does DNDI bring to the table that is the value added to the entire system that's different from what everybody else is doing?
Okay, so first, DNDI brings the research and development. The way to do research and development, the different way of doing research and development, brings that to the table. And also the fact that we have trained, we strengthen health systems. We do a lot of training for the people that are working together with us, so that we move together. And in that, you have to have trust, in the system. And so that's where we are. That's the area that we concentrate on. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a brief technical question because I wanted to pull up the slide again for the value chain, but it doesn't seem to be working. I'll try again.
So we also do like access at the end, so research and development, and also access to treatments. That's also our area, because there's no point of developing treatments when it doesn't reach the people that need it most. So also we bring in the access strength into the system. And so with the clinical trial teams that we have built, we have about 68 clinical trials in so many countries. And so the capacity that has been built can be used for another problem that we can have, like when COVID came, because we're working in very many countries, it was easy to put a team together to be able to support the clinical trials that were going on. And now we have MPOX, and so we are ready. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've been working in the value chain to provide you with a picture of what's out there. We've heard from an impact investment fund so far and from DNDI in the realms of product development partnerships. Let's move to the private sector and hear from Carlos what exactly is being done by the private sector. colors. I'm honest. When I heard, someone from Johnson & Johnson will be joining, I had this picture in mind. Okay, I kind of know what the private sector is doing. I have an idea in mind. But then we started talking about the corporate functions within J&J and the foundation that J&J supports as a sole donor, including Impact Ventures, which is a fund within the foundation that is supported by J&J. And that's something completely different. I was like, okay, now it's really something that I wasn't expecting. And it's so interesting to see that setup, but how exactly does it work in practice? J&J being a private company with a fund of their own, what do you do? How does that work?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. It's a privilege to be joining this panel. As you said, J&J is a very large organization that develops, manufactures, and commercializes many products across pharmaceuticals and medical technologies. It has, a legacy of over 135 years of bringing these products to market, and always a vision of improving health for humanity. And as you said at the beginning, you cannot think about improving health for humanity if you're not including low and middle income countries, which are by far represent the largest part of the population. So it was pretty evident that if we had that aspiration, that we had to do something or not only something, but a significant part of the work for low and middle income countries included. So as part of our traditional sectors and the R&D functions, we do develop products and manufacture products that were initially intended for diseases that disproportionately affect people living in low and middle income countries. So we have a history of developing products in areas like TB, HIV, Ebola, and many other areas. But through the process of doing that, also on the medical technology side of things, working on obstetric fistula, working on lumbar fracture, things that are, again, disproportionately affecting people living in low and middle income countries. But through the process of doing that, we learned that as big as J&J can be seen, it cannot fix anything by its own. We especially when we look at all these areas, all these partnerships, as Mani was saying, you cannot do it alone. You need to partner with people. So when I see this journey for J&J, we play across multiple parts of this journey, depending on the product, depending on the disease, depending on the area.
So you're actually flexible on where you come in the value chain, and you don't work from the value chain deciding where you want to come in, but the other way around, you look at the product and then you decide, okay, this is something we want to support. Is that correct?
That's correct on one angle, but on the other angle, we also learned that many times we might not have the product. Many times we might not have the technology to address an area. And there's where the J&J Foundation and the Impact Ventures teams came on, because we learned that even if we don't have a product, we do have financing mechanisms and we do have capabilities that we can offer to other companies to tackle things that we believe important to tackle, but that we might be able to do ourselves. So as you described, we have within the corporate functions a group that is devoted to global health equity, where we're trying to develop different programs to close the gaps in equity and provide access to quality care for all. And in order to do that, we use funding and leverage fund from the J&J Foundation, which is an independent 501c3 organization, which its only donor is the J&J organization. But that foundation has no ties to the commercial interest of the company. And within the J&J Foundation, which has provided funding for many programs that are focused in supporting healthcare workers and supporting innovative approaches for quality care, we have the Impact Ventures organization, which is a very unique setup in which you have dedicated funds within the foundation that are targeting or addressing or partnering with companies, pre-A or A companies that are seeking funding, but also that are seeking some capabilities. We provide in the order between 500 to $2 million investment to these companies. We have 21 investments at this time. But on top of the funding, we also provide capabilities that we as an organization may have: financing, manufacturing, R&D capabilities, because many times for those startups, they need capital, but it's also hard to build everything they need from a capabilities perspective on their own. So we have a group of, a big number of employees from J&J that work with those companies on a secondment that it's up to 40% of their time, providing their expertise on marketing or on supply chain or on finance, so that those companies can not only leverage the financing that the Impact Ventures group can do, but also some of the capabilities that J&J more broader has to offer.
Mm. You mentioned some 21 investments,
Yeah.
is that correct? Where would you say, well, with your Impact Ventures fund still being rather young in the landscape, where would you say you have your foot in the door to achieve tangible impact for populations in low and middle income countries? From the 21, what's the one example that you would like to highlight where you think that's going to be something?
So we have the fund, as you said, is relatively young, the Impact Ventures Fund. It was established in 2019, and in just 5 years we have now 21 companies. Of those 21 companies, there are already 2 companies that have matured and that have now providing revenues that are being reinvested in the fund. So those are, a good example, because we want this fund to be self-sustainable. So the mechanism that we have with debt and equity from these companies allows that when those companies mature, the proceedings could be reinvested on the fund, so it has a long-term sustainability perspective. So.
Sounds very interesting. Mm-hmm. We keep moving along the value chain, and as you've probably figured out by now, it's not by chance that we've put the panelists up in a way that they kind of align with the value chain you see on the graph. So we'll be moving to Hala now from Universals and Unizima, as a company focusing not only on research and development, but also on improving product development and actually production. So I need to check my notes actually, because with so many questions, I don't have them all in my head. Hala, could you explain the workflow for making a new production site happen if you were a company working with Unizima? What's the workflow? I want to set up a new production site in an emerging market. How does that work? What do you do?
Thank you, Anya. And that's a nice question. So very briefly, at Universals, we innovate in the way we manufacture RNA-based therapeutics and vaccines. And so at the heart, we're scientists and engineers who simplify the way you make these drugs. To make it cheaper, smaller footprint, more accessible, and open the playing field. So that's very nice for RNA-based therapeutics and vaccines. We knew when we created Unizima within Universals that this wouldn't go fast enough. We wanted to go even faster. We don't want to wait for this relatively new technology to trickle down, even though, and I want to talk about that, we think it will trickle down or trickle up from the global majority to the north very quickly, and I'm excited to talk about that. But we created Unizima because we wanted to bring the know-how and the expertise of how to build a manufacturing site, an industrial site, from what we know in Belgium, which is known for being, I think, one of the largest vaccine producer per capita in the world, and a really strong industrial history and manufacturing history in pharma. We wanted to bring that know-how to new markets, to emerging markets, to low and middle income countries, to what I like to call the global majority, to everywhere where it's needed. And so Unizima partners with governments and public institutions sometimes, but mostly with private sector people who want to build a new factory for biologics in their own country. And so it starts with understanding your market. It's going to look like this flow chart very quickly. So the first thing Unizima does is come and give advice on what's the strategy, which products to choose, and which modality for manufacturing for these products. And there, I'll be very honest, I think we're here, to talk about the real issues. There can be a lot of mix-up between the aspiration, the political agenda, the trauma from COVID, from lacking those vaccines, to jumping to, I want a vaccine factory. And it's been really interesting. It's a learning for all of us. Sometimes what that country or that ecosystem needs is an insulin factory, or a monoclonal antibodies factory, or a small pharma factory. And so that's the strength of Unisima within Universals, is that we're technology agnostic. We come with a very broad know-how, and we can advise across a broad chain. So once you have your product strategy and your market strategy, you go into concept design, then basic design, then detailed design. This is very much engineering consulting space. It's kind of my background too in construction. Then once you have your detailed design, you procure a company that will build the factory. You do that, you equip it. It sounds easier when I say it. My team would not be very happy. There's very complex commissioning, qualification, validation of equipment to pass these GMP, good manufacturing practice audits in the factory once you've built it. Then finally you're ready. You have to do your test runs and bring that to the regulator. And still you've not sold anything to the market through all this time. Then finally you have your test runs, you get pre-qualification or regulatory approval, you start churning products out of the factory. And so at Unisima, we're able to accompany our clients across that value chain. We work in Senegal, for instance, we work in Saudi Arabia. But we also have, and these are actual projects where I have people on the ground in factories building the thing. We also have a lot of work that is earlier stage, more to the product and market strategy and the concept design, feasibility study stage in a range of countries from Nigeria to Mozambique to Benin. So really, we're seeing the hunger for access to this technology and these markets in a very broad range of places.
Hala, which achievement of Unisima would you like to scale up or to replicate someplace else? If it was up to you, that is.
Yeah.
Really personally, Hala's scaling up.
Okay. This is really why I joined Universals. I believe that there's a potential shift from using nucleic acid technology, so DNA, RNA-based therapeutics and vaccines, that could be a game changer. I'm not a scientist, but I think the science has advanced so much that it's opening up potential drastic changes for a leapfrog. And that word is often overused. But I think in this case, there's a real opportunity for countries who don't have a traditional biologics, biotech ecosystem to invest in cheaper, faster, easier to make products. And I think nucleic acid will open this up, and that's thanks to the scientists. But I think we need a shift in mindset in the business model and the access, and that's really what I would like to scale up. And if I was to choose one, I would say we have an mRNA insights training that uses our very clever process for RNA, which is normally in our robot, which some of you might have seen. It sits in a container, it's all automated, it's very, very high tech. We have the equivalent of that thing that's called a nano kit that sits on a benchtop. And we're able to bring very quickly this know-how and this process to actually use your usual lab equipment, but to get into what it takes to make RNA using this nano kit. And it's a very, compared to the ambitions of the group, it's very small, but you asked me for mine. And so I would like Unisima to bring this training in RNA through this manual kit to very, very many universities and labs and small biotechs in emerging markets.
Can I try? Because it sounds really interesting.
We're very near Brussels.
Yeah, okay. Hold you up to it. Michael, you're, well, at the end of the table from my perspective, but what you're focusing on with MedAccess is, well, that part of the value chain that actually makes the products happen, that makes products affordable, and, well, now I'm missing the English word for having something available. Well, the
That's it.
availability, there it is. Isn't the brain a wonderful thing, even on a Sunday morning? So you focus on making access happen in a way that's affordable for people in low and middle income countries. What are the instruments that are available to MedAccess as a social enterprise working on that piece of the value chain to make that happen?
Thank you, Anya. And I may say thank you for organizing this panel. And thank you especially for organizing the molecules to markets sort of umbrella for this. You know, I would love it if more donors thought about the entire value chain, because there's far too much of looking at particular pieces. But if we're going to succeed as a species in addressing these big challenges, we've got to think about the whole. And so it's a really, really, really powerful framing. Thank you for doing that. Also, I very quickly thank the German government for funding the product development partnerships. The PDPs are the most important changers in the world you've never heard of, and they don't get much funding, and they're really fantastic at value for money. So I'm not a member of a PDP, so I can say this as an outsider. They are just terrific, so well done. So as you said, we work at those. If you look at the value chain, we work on the 3 boxes on the right-hand side, and we invest in helping to make markets work. One of the things, if you think about, you know, neoclassical economics tells us that markets clear, people supply things, people buy things, and the prices work out. Often it's not that easy. There are lots of companies who have good products they would love to sell in low-income countries, but the risks are too high. And there are, you know, according to the WHO, some 2 billion people who cannot get access to the essential medicines they need to lead healthy lives. So the demand is there, but it's being unmet. There's supply that is not able to bridge. And often that is because it's risky on both sides. It's too many business risks to venture into uncertain markets. And for governments and health delivery agencies, it's often too difficult to take the big risk of bringing a new product into the market alone. And so what MedAccess does is we step in to help take away some of the risks and help fund both the supply and the demand to make this part work. And we cover vaccines, diagnostics, treatments, devices, a whole range of things. I'm not going to go into all of those. You asked about the instruments. There are 3. If you look at the box which says market maturity and manufacturing, we invest in helping help fund local manufacturing, particularly in Africa. And that's about broadening out the manufacturing base. So we do what many investors do. We tend to support smaller manufacturers who are trying to grow their size. Often they're too small for most investors to get involved in. The profit margins are too small to get involved in. But we get involved because our purpose is to invest in the market and then the supply side of the market, improving supply.
Michael, how do you do that? When you say you support them in that segment, what do they get from you?
Yeah, sorry, the loans.
Loans,
They can get
right.
loans, they can get working capital, they can get loan guarantees from us. We do all of those.
You're a bit like a bank.
That's right. No, we are a lot like a bank.
Hello there.
So that's one thing we do, and we can talk more about that. But I guess the difference with MedAccess is we're interested in the prosperity of the company. We want companies to thrive, but that's not why we're investing. We're not investing to get a financial return. We're investing to get more supply of the product. And I tend to identify specific products rather than specific companies that would need to be improved. And that's a bit of a different investing lens. The second thing we do, if you look at the next line along, the financing and procurement, we provide financing for procurement entities. So for example, during COVID, we supplied a $50 million guarantee to UNICEF so UNICEF could go out and place big bulk orders for the PPE, the diagnostics, and the clinical equipment we needed to respond to COVID. Those big bulk orders allowed products to be manufactured more quickly, but also made lower prices available for developing countries and who wanted to get access. So it's providing the finance to mobilize the procurement market so it moves more effectively. So we do that, and we do that with both public and private procurers. The third instrument we use is what we call a volume guarantee. And this is where we partner with manufacturers who are thinking of bringing a product into the market, but they're really uncertain. Well, we don't know what the demand's going to be like for a period of years. This is a risky market. We don't know if there's going to be enough buyers. The margins are probably lower than we're accustomed to in places we sell elsewhere. And so we go in and we do really detailed demand analysis. How much of this stuff can we sell? And we provide to the company a volume guarantee, which is a guarantee of offtake for a period of 2 to 6 years. And it's kind of like sales insurance. So we partner with the company. We say, look, we think it's a great product. We think you're going to sell this. But if you don't, if sales fall below a certain level, we will make a financial payment to you. And that gives the companies the ability to make longer-term investments to produce more and therefore take advantage of economies of scale, and to make long-term investments, which they otherwise wouldn't be able to make. And kind of the bargain we do with companies is, in return for this volume guarantee, we want you to bring your product faster into more countries and at lower prices. So we tend to secure between 15 and 60% price reductions, which helps save money for the procurers and for health professionals. I could talk much more about how that product works, but it's unusual because most investors only invest on the supply side, investing in new manufacturing equipment and so on. We're investing in the demand side. And I'll just say, because I know you need more time back, over our 6 years, we've supported products that have reached 539 million people. So it's really large scale in 110 countries. And that's purely made possible because of partnerships. And everyone here has talked about partnerships. We partner with great companies. We also partner with the WHO, with lots of governments. And we're looking to make markets healthier by having more suppliers, more competition, more transparency of pricing. Because if markets are working in a healthy way, that's good for business, but it's also good for patients. It's good for health professionals. It's good for governments.
Thank you. With all those funds being invested and the hundreds of millions of people already benefiting from what all of your funds, companies, etc. are doing, we could now say, all right, let's get coffee early. But we all know there are still challenges ahead of us in the system. It's not all rosy. We are not done yet. There is still so much to do out there, and I'd like to use the next few minutes with you to talk about the challenges and opportunities ahead of us. And I'll be transparent with you. I might not have played my timekeeping role as strictly as I was supposed to during this first round of questions, because it's just too interesting to hear you talking. It's all my fault. I will be a bit more strict. Don't be alarmed if I come in at certain times to give us the chance to also then have a question and answer session with the audience. So let's talk about what else do we need to do. And I'd like to start with Monique. We have the value chain ahead of us, but where do you feel there are gaps that need still to be addressed from the side of DNDi, for example, in the realms of product development partnerships, for example?
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Up till now, we have developed 13 new treatments for the 6 deadliest diseases that are affecting millions of people. And so that is good. And we developed this from existing treatments. And while we were doing that, we also started to develop new chemical entities. I don't know how to simplify that, but new treatments in the pipeline. And these are now coming out 20 years later. And so we will be able to give people treatments. You take this, Monique, go and take this at home for a day or 2 days or 1 week and see us later. So that's where we are going. Oral treatments treat people where they are, because some of them are too sick, too poor to get to a treatment facility. And some die on the way and never, they don't even make a statistic that they died. So that will be a game changer. And then the other one, of course, with these diseases, like for leishmaniasis and for sleeping sickness, we are then getting into elimination. The tools that we are developing will be very essential for elimination, which means that we can treat many people and achieve the impact. People will not be dying, and the disease will be eliminated, being eliminated. So that's where we are headed. Of course, there are challenges in terms of funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the type of funding that we are getting is for specific for project funding. We should actually fund the portfolio, the whole portfolio, the long-term funding. So the quality,
Could you specify that? What does that mean? A portfolio, is that types of products that you'd like to see combined, and you receive funding for that, or what does that look
Yeah,
like?
the whole process. What we are talking about here, research and development. You have very many projects, one leading to another, from beginning to the end, so that the patient gets the treatment. Sorry, I'm going to knock you. So I'm animated. Sorry. So that up to access. Yeah. So that entire process, because you can't just fund one thing, and then these are also interconnected that we need to get to the end. So if that quality of funding could be improved, that really would be success. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Thank you. Carlos.
But you asked for the future, did you? No.
Yes, I did, but we'll
come back
tackle
to
the
me,
future
yeah.
together.
Okay.
Otherwise, it
Yeah.
probably won't happen.
Okay.
For Impact Ventures, J&J is the sole funder via the foundation. Where do you see the challenges for your business model for Impact Ventures? And what's your vision for the future? Are you going to open up for public funders? Are you going to find other private entities investing as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our fund is solely funded by J&J, by the J&J Foundation, and the J&J Foundation is solely funded by J&J as a corporation. But that doesn't mean that the companies that we're funding or investing in are not getting investments from other funders. In fact, in most of the cases, they're getting investments from multiple companies or multiple investment impact venture funding. So for us, working with the rest of the ecosystem is very important. It's a way to de-risk things for us. It's also a way to further support these organizations if they have more than one company behind them or more than one impact investment funds behind them. We believe that is more effective. It's still risky. When you're going early, we try to target very early stage startups, pre-stage A. So it's still a risky business. We have only, out of the 21 investments that we have had, we have only had one failure so far, but it's still painful when you see a company, a startup, that doesn't get it. So it's not bulletproof, but if you don't take the risk, it's not going to happen. So 1 out of 20, it was very sad for that one. But still, we have 20 that are moving forward. 2 of them have already matured. So.
Well, how do you assess the need for more of that, bravery to risk something, to invest in companies that aren't yet at a stage where they can successfully deliver products to the market, where they are in their startup phase? How do you assess the need for more investments in that kind of sense?
Yeah, one of the things that we learned on the process was that, again, supporting them with more than capital was important. Providing them other capabilities that we have developed internally that we as a company are using to de-risk our own programs and put that kind of intelligence and capabilities to their service is a way to help them de-risk in their own portfolios. Our own impact venture teams to have a better assessment of what is how solid these companies are
Mm.
before we make a commitment.
Mm. And in terms of the system overall, would you encourage others to come into that segment as well, or is it all fine and done because J&J has Impact Ventures and you're tackling the world?
No, the more the merrier.
We'll talk about that probably in the sum up. Is it really the more the merrier, or should we be consolidating? That's actually something that would be interesting to talk about. We'll
It
see
doesn't
if
have to be one
we
or.
have time for that. Michael, what do you say to that? We'll just keep rolling with that question. Is it the more the merrier from your perspective, talking from the access perspective, or would you say, well, at this point in time, we should actually be talking and thinking about consolidation rather than broadening the instruments, as I said in my introduction? I did say we need to broaden, but what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be learned from the way private markets work. So you see in medical innovation lots and lots of biotech startups that are, they're little teams exploring their own ideas. They're operating in an ecosystem where there's enough capital. They need the autonomy and space to be able to do creative things. And then we also have consolidation, and those biotechs tend to get consolidated. So I think we need an ecosystem where there is a mix of the capacity to pull together large-scale operations with consolidation, and but also to be able to facilitate smaller entities to do innovative things. So I think in the investing area, if that's what we're looking at, say, I think we need that same kind of mix. And that's one of the attractions of something like Labib's organization, which is they can be an umbrella organization, but also investing in platforms that do specific things. If I may say, specifically among the development finance institutions that operate among the kind of big donor countries, I think there's a lot of room for collaboration, probably much more than, and sometimes we could get that right by working together a bit more. So it's a horrible answer, Anya, but I do think we need both.
Mhm.
That you kind of need that nimble, flexible, imaginative, let's try it out, let's fail fast, and we need the large scale, let's think about the whole. I do think it's really, really useful to have the kind of intellectual architecture or scaffolding that you have in this kind of molecules to markets, and then someone thinking about what are all of the pieces being addressed and where are the gaps. Do you need someone to think about that?
Thank you. Labib, I have a question for you that I wouldn't be wanting to be getting myself, to be honest, so let's see how that rolls. We have seen funding influxes after crises. That's a mechanism that not only pertains to the health sector, but to others as well. What could impact investment funds do from your perspective, from your experience, to stabilize that cycle that we see? A crisis arrives, we see a high influx of funds, the crisis abides, and also the funds abide. What could impact investment funds do on their end to stabilize this cycle?
Thank you. And a couple thoughts. One, it's interesting thinking about the cyclical nature of the response to crisis and then what follows naturally. One of our important partnerships that I hadn't mentioned before is with the agency of the U.S. government, BARDA, and it was launched in the midst of the pandemic in 2021, and it was to try to do exactly this, to try to bring forward additional investment capital to try to prepare for future challenges, future health challenges, focusing on global health security, which could build over time a portfolio globally of technologies and products that can help us address some of the lessons and challenges that we experienced through the COVID pandemic. And I should mention that many elements of that partnership with the U.S. government, we drew from our partnership with Germany, BMZ and KfW, in terms of some of the themes and structures. So it was an ability to take some of the best elements of what we'd done and try to bring that forward and expand through another partnership. So that's one. I think another is to try to enlarge the pool, which I think is something we're all thinking about, enlarge the pool of capital that is interested in mission-focused investment efforts. And I think for that, there's such massive amounts of investment capital in the world. There's increasing interest in impact, finding the instruments that can attract different types of return-seeking capital, different capital with different interest and return-seeking requirements, is something that is an experiment that's ongoing, and many in this room and elsewhere are experimenting with different models of structured investments, with different types of mechanisms to bring forward return-seeking capital and blend that with catalytic capital. And I think the more that some of the actors in the world who have access to catalytic capital can bring that forward to stimulate greater investment from private capital to enlarge the pool, the better. I think that's sort of a challenge for us today and tomorrow, is to continue to try to evolve instruments and examples and case studies that can continue to gain confidence in this and attract additional capital.
Thank you. Hala, building off of what Labib just said in terms of we need more collaboration, we need to use funds more effectively, we need to partner on using funds. From your and from Unisima's unique standpoint, what could that look like? How could we collaborate? How could we have equal access to funds, using funds on the same topic, for example?
So that's a really important question, I think, and with innovation in RNA and the work we're doing in Universals and Unisima, I see a really specific question and a few specific answers that I think are exciting. So as we know, global health has tended to be quite siloed in verticals by disease, and with the best of intentions, we've poured money into specific causes, which have made a difference, massive difference. Let's not argue with that. And is great, but has tended to perhaps weaken the horizontal or weaken or not strengthen enough the local healthcare system. There's one thing that I think we should really think hard and have an opportunity to avoid here. So RNA has a potential to make a difference in vaccines for infectious diseases. This is proven because it worked for COVID. Fine. We think at Universals that we have a way to make it such lower cost for a certain type of RNA that it becomes applicable to animal vaccines, that you can reduce the cost so much that you open up the field of animal vaccines, with the potential for countries to improve food security, but also antimicrobial resistance, because if you use a vaccine, you need not to use antibiotics, etc. So that's a huge field. And then the third one, which is where the Modernas and the BioNTechs of the world are going, is cancer. And that obviously is going to be a very big market, a very commercial market. Our thesis is there's no reason for that, let's call it a step change, to not use the leapfrog word again, in cancer to be happening in a few countries, and for everybody else to wait patiently for many years for what are likely to be expensive treatments to come down. And so we're really looking hard for ways to attack the cancer angle right away from everywhere at the same time, with a view to affordability. Because even the richest healthcare systems are not going to be able to, with aging populations, etc., to afford the kind of cancer care that is available today on the market. And it's amazing science that's transformed the cell and gene therapy field, but it's not good enough. It's not getting to, it's too expensive. Nobody can afford this. And whether it's cell and gene therapy or RNA for cancer, those personalized cancer vaccine, I think there's an opportunity to really reduce the cost. So to your question, I believe that there's a potential in that field to invest once in public labs, university research teams, place the capability for RNA in one place and don't create a vertical around it. Make it available as a capability for researchers who do infectious disease vaccines for animal health and for cancer. Once they go to the right of the flow, they will need to find each their economic model, their business, but at that point, private capital flows in, so it's not an issue anymore. But at the beginning, let's invest in a way that is not siloed. And I just want to close by saying I was really happy that DNDi was here and represented by Dr. Monique, because none of this move towards product development that we all want to be in and to do it in more and more places. We need the groundwork that's being done by organizations like DNDi and others, and yeah, so we'll build on the shoulders of these organizations when we bring this.
Thank you, Hala, also for those specific examples of what collaboration and cost sharing could look like. We have 15 minutes left, so we'll do a question and answer session of 13 minutes. We will. Yes, well, I'm German. What can I say to that? There will be a mic passed around. You can show you have a question by raising your hand. When you get the mic, please state your name and let us know your affiliation. Let us know to which of the panelists you'd like to address your question, and please start with a question, then provide us with the context of your question. That makes it easier for the panelists to actually understand where you are going and to answer your question most appropriately. Thank you. Let's start.
Thank you. I am Misha Rumianzev from Lyon in France. I worked for more than 30 years with Pasteur Mérieux-Connaught, and at this time we developed, produced, distributed largely vaccines, more than 30 vaccines for human use, vaccine and immunotherapy for human use, and even more for veterinary animal use. When I retired, I became a WHO expert for WHO, then with also for the European Commission. And in this different position, we discovered that it's very difficult to provide vaccines or any product in very difficult remote rural area, even more difficult when it is in mountains.
Thank you for this context. You'd like to address a question to which of the panelists?
Why? This is more important. Why it's impossible? Because we cannot reach this population. There are no doctors, no pharmacists, no veterinarians, no nurses. So we need to bring this by another way. And now we try to work with a health worker, very simple health worker, to really. We know now with some of my colleagues that there is more than 50 million children who have no access to vaccine. So we try to find some solution presently.
Thank you very much. There are other questions in the, well, everywhere in the room. I'm so happy to see all of your hands. There will be someone coming with a mic to you.
Yeah, good morning, Andreas Wolf, working with Medico International and the German Platform for Global Health. Thank you very much for explaining how the creative ideas how to make private capital and private actors in global health more responsible for neglected diseases. What I'm a bit concerned, and this question might also go to Michael Anderson, is it really realistic to expect like a transparent pricing model being part of such a de-risking of private investment? Because what we have seen and what we're now discussing in Germany actually is that there is basically a withdrawing of transparency on pricing, so the power of the producers the providers of healthcare towards secreting their innovations, their pricing models is quite high, and it would be interesting in what experiences you have with this to really make this work as your plan. Thank you, Pamela.
You want to do it now? Or
Michael,
do you
yeah.
take several?
With a view to time, let's take several, and let's try to start with the questions so we can group those questions more easily. Thank you.
Hi there. Oh, this is on. Hi, Peter Liu from Oxford Cancer Analytics. Partnerships and collaboration was a big theme today, so I'll give the context and then a how question regarding that. So we focus on early cancer detection using a simple blood test, starting from the cancers that are detected the latest and killing the most number of people, starting from lung cancer. That particular technology of early cancer detection, known as liquid biopsy using a blood test, has traditionally been viewed as very expensive and inaccessible for people of low and middle income country origin, but here we actually are trying to produce something that's very much up to 1/10 the cost compared to leading competitor before, and that's deployable using existing technology. Now, the question, it becomes more expensive when it comes to distribution and channels, and that's why partnership is really important for us, working with larger pharma companies and other organizations that are on this. My question is specifically for Carlos here. For example, J&J has a particular emphasis on lung cancer, but what I find is that working with larger organizations, with departments that can be siloed, how do you find the right people within the right organization? How do you make that the most cost-effective and time-effective manner? Because time can be money with runtime with both smaller and larger organizations. How do you make these partnerships most effective, cost and time-effective?
Thank you. Well, we won't be able to extend the panel till this afternoon, but we'll take a third question to round it up.
Hi, Colette Morlino, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Kind of a somewhat related question. You've touched a bit on collaboration with academic research institutions and the role in this, but I wondered if you could expand a bit more and if there are more opportunities for more effective collaboration as academic kind of sits both to the left and the right of this pathway in some ways.
Is your question addressed to someone specifically or to the entire panel? Because then we will even this up.
I think Hala has spoken a bit about the academic connection, but open to anyone.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we'll start off with Michael because you had one question addressed to yourself, and for the rest, I'd like the panel to actually decide which question you'd want to take.
Great, I'm going to be a glutton and take two. So on the transparent pricing, you're absolutely right. It is very difficult, and I share with you concerns about worrying trends to some companies having less transparency rather than more. And I think it is just one of those things where it's helpful where you've got large buyers, they can insist on transparency. That makes it easier. And when we go in and negotiate, we make transparency of pricing a cost of getting our capital. If they want the financial support, we've got to have transparency. And that doesn't mean transparency of cost for goods for sale. We don't need COGS transparency or anything like that, but there has to be clear. And just one example, we had one company, pricing of viral load testing across Africa was really opaque. There were different prices in all countries and even different districts in different countries. And so we got one company to come in and they announced one price that was the maximum price available to 34 countries simultaneously, and they did it in public. And it just broke open the market because the other suppliers had to have a transparent price. So it is possible, but you're absolutely right to say it's hard. I wanted to say on collaborating with London School of Hygiene and others, there's one specific way that I think investors could do more of. We collaborate quite a lot on technology, but we could collaborate more on impact. So one of the things that we do is we hire epidemiologists to do epidemiological modeling of the impacts of our products. And that's a really powerful tool. Having the tools of epidemiology come into the investing world is a real place for growth in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, well, I'm the one to organize actually, but I like to leave it up to you which question you want to take. But how about we do the reverse, Hala?
I feel I took a lot of time, but in Universals we love to collaborate with academics, and that is really how we do things, and it's getting even more the case as we move from focusing on developing the equipment we move to product development. So at the moment, we're launching a lot of significant work with academic institutions in Europe, in Africa mainly, possibly in the Middle East. It's very time consuming, the money flows are complicated, but we take the pain of it because that's what we're here for and that's what we want to do. But it brings to the fore even more the importance of patient capital, investors that are happy to go along on the journey, take risks with us. And so again, that goes back to the importance of what the German and other governments are doing, the importance of the work of Labib and others in that space.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments on the last two questions because they're somehow connected for us. So one of the things we're doing in terms of connecting better with academia and with the startups, we have a model that we call innovation centers and J labs that you might have heard of, where we establish groups of scientists from J&J nearby the big academic centers around the world. We have in Boston, we have in London, in Shanghai, in Brussels, to ensure that our scientists are well connected with scientists from academia. And in parallel of that, we have this group called J Labs, which is incubating startups all around the world to again try to connect the company with the ecosystem out there. Because to the question on how to find the right person internally, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the know-who is harder to get to the know-how than the know-how, sorry. So you mentioned that we sit at the corporate level. So the Impact Ventures team is a good mechanism to get into the ecosystem of J&J because they're connected with everybody within J&J. So if you go to each therapeutic area in the sectors, the people in oncology are not talking to the people in immunology and are talking to the lung cancer device people, which we have 3 or 4 different groups working in lung cancer, whether it's pharma or devices or the intersection. But the Impact Ventures people in the company are working with all of them, so they can easily connect you with the right people.
Thank you, Carlos. Monique.
Okay, so I think I take the question on how do you find the right people, and I think that if the individual, if you have passion for what you're doing, and thus we have a lot of it in D&DI, which overflows, I think and inspire the young people to be able to work with you and mentor them and train them, I think you'll be able to attract more collaborations. But I see that sometimes collaboration and partnerships are not equal. You come in as a big person, and the other one feels intimidated and with no power. That will never work. So unless we are honest enough that we are equal partners in what we are doing, it will never work. London School and Hygiene, I'm an alumni. And when D&DI was created and we are building capacity for clinical trials, we actually work with the London School of Hygiene. They provided the technical know-how, or even a simple thing like reading the slides, seeing the Leishmania parasites. They are so small, like a dot in a cell. So if you are not trained to see it, you will see the patient doesn't have leishmaniasis. So that technical transfer from academia to the low middle income countries, or to where the diseases are, and where there's not really good technical acumen on this, because a new phenomenon. So that has worked in the past, and I think it can continue. That working with academia.
Thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I need like 30 seconds after Labib has spoken to wrap up. So Labib, is there?
I'll keep it short. Just on the academic collaboration, I mean, there's so much innovation coming from academic centers globally. Of course, private investment is sometimes challenged to invest into those programs where they're housed. So often the focus is on trying to help launch technologies and bring them forward as they spin out. I would just mention that we deeply value collaborations and engagement with leading scientists in the fields that we work in, and we actually just launched a grant program to try to help support early stage research that is promising and is advancing in academic centers that we may be able to reach a little bit earlier in the normal course, but we can chat about that offline. Thank you.
Sounds wonderful. All right, I might have interpreted the 30 seconds for wrap up a bit freely here, so please bear with me. It will be over very shortly. Summing up, all right, this is going to be difficult. Well, the easy thing is to thank you. Thank you for participating in this event. Thanks to the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, represented by State Secretary Mr. Jochen Flassbart and his colleagues. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the WHS team for making this workshop and session possible. This panel is now closed. But let me try to give you a few points to discuss over lunch. We had two objectives going into this session. The first was to provide you with some insights into the ecosystem when developing medtech, biotech, and health tech products benefiting most predominantly populations living in low and middle income countries. And I hope we've achieved that. But could you give me a raise of hand? Did we do a good job on that? Yes or no? Okay, wow. Thank you for the feedback. Excellent. For the second objective, talking about challenges and opportunities out there, probably let me try 3 points. Let me grab my notes real quick. From Michael, we both need consolidation and diversity, so I'll hope you'll have the opportunity to go into that over lunch. We still need more collaboration. There is collaboration out there. We've heard examples of what that could look like and how we need more of that. But again, only just to throw a very broad, topic out there, and you can go into more details over lunch. For financing, yes, that is the big question. We've heard from perspectives of public funding, of private funding. We've seen examples of how they can both be combined to leverage more impact for the populations in low and middle income countries. I'm not sure if we've made really good start on where do we need to go there. So that's definitely also a question that we will be pondering over together. Those 3 points. Up for discussion, lunch, dinner, whenever you have the time. I think the panelists will be open to also discuss this further with you. This panel is now closed. Thank you very much for your participation and have a very good day. Thank you.